In this video, I'm going to be showing you my process for embellishing the Ethereal Fairy costume. The pattern document gives you lots of ideas for embellishment, but here I'm going to show you my process so you can see how I do things and you can come up with your own embellishment plan. Let's get creating. Hi, I'm Traci Akierman, the designer and creator behind KeLibu. I make doll clothes patterns and accessories for 16 to 20 inch dolls. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you always know when I've posted a new video. I make videos showing you how to enhance your KeLibu patterns, how to make cool accessories to go with your outfits, as well as offering tips and tricks on making creating easier. If you're looking for information on any of the products I've used in this video, please check the description below for a link. Let's get to creating. Here I've got the unaltered, unembellished shirts and skirts from the Ethereal Fairy pattern. This is shirt number 1, shirt number 2, skirt number 1, skirt number 2. So there are a number of things that I will use from embellishments, and I'll just clear these out of the way so I can show you. I like to use a variety of trims, so today I'm going to be using these leaf trim. They come on a spool like lace or ribbon. I'm probably going to use some of these ribbon flowers to applique on. I've got a variety of beads that I will probably use to embellish. I've got Sharpie marker. Basically, you can use any type of alcohol-based markers. Sharpie is alcohol-based. I also use Copic and other no-name brand alcohol markers. You're going to need some sharp scissors and some sewing needles. I like to use the Clover Black Gold needles because they're very sharp and thin and they can fit through most of the beads. And then lastly, I have this bag of fabric odds and ends that I keep. So every time I've got a little bit of leftover lace or fabric, I'll shove it in there. Comes in handy for projects like this because I can snip off little pieces and use them to applique. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I'm starting with shirt number 1 here, and what I like to do is just kind of lay trims and various things onto the shirt, kind of decide what I'm going to use, and then start playing around with placement. So I've settled on this darker green leaf trim, some gold beads, various kinds of green beads in different colors and shapes and sizes, and these little chiffon ribbon roses. So I'm going to start by just laying this out here. I think that I want it to go across the shirt like this, sort of starting on the one back edge and going all the way up to the shoulder. I just snip that off there. I'll go something like that. And then I think that I want to maybe add a couple of little offshoots. Maybe one like that. And let's see. I think maybe a third one along the bottom here. Okay. I'll see about placing some of these little flowers. Sometimes less is more. hard to know when to stop the embellishing sometimes. Let's see if I like this a little bit better. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I think that's going to be my beginning layout, and now I'm just going to get ready and sew this leaf trim down first using some thread that matches the leaves so that you can't see where they're stitched down. Once I've done that, I will attach the flowers and then decide if I am going to add some beads after all. So I've secured the leaf trim by doing a running stitch up along the stems, and I've left the leaves free, and I've tried to stitch only the outer fabric and not the lining. I did get a couple places, but just to make it look a little bit neater on the inside. The next thing that I'm going to do is attach these little flowers, and I think I'm going to put them like so. Before I stitch these down, I thought I'd just try this shirt, well, lay it loosely on my doll to make sure that I'm going to like the placement once the shirt is on. And I think that looks pretty good, so I am going to stick with my placement and just go ahead and stitch these onto the shirt. I've got my flower stitched down now, and when you're working with embellishments like this where you're adding an element, it's always best to stick with an odd number. For whatever reason, it's more pleasing to the eye if you do 3 rather than 4 or 5 rather than 6. So that's something to keep in mind when you're planning out what you're going to put where. Now, when I work with beads, I keep these little flat containers to use for my beads. Things like yogurt lids would work great. They're low profile, but they keep the beads from rolling around, and because these ones are fairly wide, it's easy to pick up the beads as I'm trying to embellish. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do here, but I'm thinking about maybe adding a few of these little gold ones just around the stems in various places to give it a little extra something. And then I had pulled these green beads out, but I'm not sure that I'm feeling them. I don't think that I am going to add these ones today. I think I might just add the little gold ones to pick up some of the yellow from the roses on the straps. I'm done adding the beads and I'm pretty happy with it. It adds a little bit of extra sparkle and picks up some of the yellow from the trim that I use for the straps. So I'm going to call that done. Like I said, sometimes less is more, and I have a hard time stopping with embellishments. I want to just keep going and going. Now, because I've added this to the top, I'm thinking that I'm going to add some of this trim to the skirt as well. So I'm going to take that same dark green trim and just add a layer of it all the way around the skirt. And I think that I might add a few beads along the edge of the trim for the skirt as well. So I went ahead and added the trim and some beads along here. I don't know if you can see them. I think it adds a nice little bit of sparkle to the skirt, and I didn't want to add any other embellishments to it because I feel like the actual design of the skirt is an embellishment in itself with all these little tattered bits. So I'm going to call this one done. Okay, I've got shirt number 2 here, and one of the things that I really like to do is use alcohol markers to add a little bit of color when I want to embellish things. So I've got this Sharpie here, and I had previously tested a bunch of my colors, and this is the one I thought went the best with this outfit. So I'm just going to use it to color in a few elements of this lace overlay. It's got some flowers on it, and I'm just going to lightly color in the centers of some of these flowers. And then another thing that I like to do when I am adding color with alcohol markers is I have this colorless blender, and I'll link to it in the description below. This one happens to be a Prismacolor, but you can get other brands. It's got two different ends, and one of them is this big thick wedge end, and basically it's just alcohol in here with a felt tip, and so it helps to soften the look. So it kind of blends it in. When you're using these for art, it helps to blend the colors together, but here I'm using it to just kind of soften the look. So if you look at this this one versus say this one, you can see this one's a little bit more subtle, not quite so bright. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit all of them. Yeah, I'm liking how that's looking so far. I might go back in and add a few more touches of color after I get my other embellishments on. And what I'm going to do next is to take some of my fabric remnants that I was talking about before. I've got some of this crocheted lace that I think I'm going to cut a piece out of, and I've got this polyester lace that I think I might snip some little flowers out of and applique those on. I've snipped out my little pieces of lace, so this crocheted lace, basically I just look at it and decide which little design element I'm going to snip out. So I took this guy here, and micro tip scissors are really helpful for doing that. I happen to have the Fiskars brand ones. With the polyester lace, you can see they had some little flowers that are embroidered onto the lace, so I carefully just cut around those and ended up with 3 of these. Now that I've got these pieces, I'm going to play around with them and see where I want to position them. And I think I'm going to try and do 2 up and 1 down here and see how that looks. They don't keep sneaking away from me. Sometimes it takes a bit of playing around to get something that you're happy with the look of. I like to try and make it as balanced as I can so it's pleasing to the eye. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's how I'm going to stitch these down, and then I'm going to go back in and add some beads so it has a little bit of sparkle. And here's shirt number 2 with the appliques and the beads added. I added some opalescent bugle beads, a little pearl in the center, and a couple little tiny opalescent seed beads in the centers of the pink flowers, just to give it a little bit of shine. Now that I've done that, I'm going to give the waistband of skirt number 2 a similar treatment, and I will be back in a moment to show you that. With the skirt, I started by appliquing this lace flower that I cut out of a piece of lace fabric on, and I've left the bottom of it open because what I've decided to do is add a couple little ribbon tassels to the bottom. And what I wanted to do was put some beads on the bottom and not the end so the beads wouldn't slip off. Now, I had these beads which I could use my blunt nose needle and actually thread the ribbon through as it fits all the way through the hole. But I don't really like the look of these because they're plastic, not glass. So they don't really match with the other glass beads that I've used. So I have these glass beads, which I like, but unfortunately the needle just slips through and it won't allow me to pull the ribbon through. So here's another trick you can do instead. The bead openings have to be still fairly wide in order for this to work, but I'm taking some beading thread, which is a bit stronger than normal sewing thread. I'm going to double it up and thread the ends through, so I have this loop here, And I'm going to stick the ribbon through the loop and then use the loop to draw the ribbon through. Now it takes a bit of pulling in order to work it all the way through. Oops. And it also helps when the thread doesn't slip out of your hands. But eventually you can work it through. And then I'm just going to tie a little knot in the end of my ribbon. Now this is 1/8 inch ribbon that I'm using, and I did heat seal the ends because it's a synthetic ribbon. So I'm going to figure out what length I want there. Might want to shorten that up a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing for the other bead. If I can get this thread to cooperate. But it's not going to. Okay. Got that threaded. Stick my ribbon in the loop. Pull it through. Go. Tie a little knot in the end there. Now, I've made my ribbons 2 different sizes because I like the look of that, and I'm not enjoying how high up this knot is, so I'm going to adjust that. Make it so it falls a little bit closer to the bottom. There we go. Take a look there, okay, and then what I will do is slip these 2 ends of the ribbon up under this applique. Look, okay, I'm reasonably happy with that. So now I will just continue stitching this down, making sure that I'm catching the ribbon in the stitching as I'm closing up the end of this lace applique. Go ahead and knot it off a couple of times. Oops. There we go. So there is my applique skirt. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it gave you guys some ideas about how you can embellish your own Ethereal Fairy costumes. If you don't already have the pattern, you can get it from KeLibuDesign.com. If you've made this pattern, I'd love to see pictures. You can post them in the Customer Creations Gallery at KeLibuDesign.com. I really enjoy seeing what you guys make with my patterns. If you like this video, consider subscribing so you'll always be notified when I post new videos just like this one. Also consider sharing it with someone that you think might enjoy it as well. Thanks for watching, and I have a question for you guys. What's your favorite form of embellishment? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks.